Welcome to a deep dive into the Assyrian Empire. If you're fascinated by empires that went from underdog to superpower, well, this one is for you. We're going to explore their incredible rise, their innovative approaches to trade and war. And yes, their sometimes brutal methods. We're going to be using this article, The Rise and Fall of the Assyrian Empire.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. The Assyrian Empire is a civilization known for both its impressive innovations and, let's face it, its ruthlessness.
Right. It really is. We're thinking ancient Mesopotamia, birthplace of some of the world's earliest empires. But the Assyrians stand out. How did they go from a small city-state to controlling a territory that stretched from Egypt to the Persian Gulf? That's what we're going to uncover.
That's right. And they started from pretty humble beginnings. Their journey began in the city of Assur, in what is now northern Iraq.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Assur, the city that gave the empire its name, was said to be founded by a descendant of Noah. It's amazing to think that a city with such a deep-rooted origin story would become the heart of such a powerful empire.
Yeah, it's an interesting connection to those ancient, almost mythical origins.
Yeah.
But beyond the legends, what's truly remarkable is how the Assyrians transformed from a small city-state into a dominant force in the ancient world.
Absolutely. And their success early on was fueled by trade.
Yeah.
When we think of ancient empires, we often think military might. But one of the keys to their early success was how they approached trade. King Arishan I, way back in the 1900s BC, basically made Assur a booming trade center.
Yes. He understood that open markets could lead to greater prosperity for everyone involved. He established trade agreements with distant cities, standardized weights and measures, and even created a system of commercial courts to resolve disputes. This fostered a level of economic stability unprecedented for its time.
So he wasn't just saying free trade is good, he put policies into place to make it work. And centuries before free trade became a modern buzzword, the Assyrians were already putting those principles into practice.
Exactly. And it's a point that often gets overlooked. Of course, like all empires, they faced their share of challenges. Rival powers emerged, conflicts arose. And that early period of prosperity eventually came to an end.
Okay, so they hit some bumps in the road. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Assyrians came back even stronger. And this time, military might and strategic genius took center stage.
Right. This is where brilliant military strategists like Ashur-uballit I and Tiglath-Pileser III really changed the game. They transformed the Assyrian war machine. And one of their most significant innovations was the introduction of a standing army.
A standing army, I get that that's standard now. But in ancient times, that must have been a huge change.
Absolutely. A standing army meant having a professional, highly trained force ready to deploy at any moment. Before this, armies were often temporary, assembled for specific campaigns. Imagine the resources and logistical planning required to feed, equip, and train a permanent force.
That's incredible. It makes sense, though. A standing army would give you a huge advantage. It's no wonder they were able to expand their empire so rapidly.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about numbers. The Assyrians were masters of siege warfare. They developed sophisticated techniques to overcome even the most fortified cities. They were brilliant at logistics, ensuring their troops were well supplied even on long campaigns. And they even mastered the art of psychological warfare, using fear as a weapon.
Yeah, I've heard about that. They had a reputation for being pretty ruthless. The source that we're using mentions these incredible stone carvings that the Assyrian rulers commissioned.
Yes, those carvings are incredibly detailed and tell a story. On the one hand, you see depictions of their grand achievements, their palaces, elaborate ceremonies, and military victories. But alongside those images, you also see scenes of brutal conquest and punishment.
Wow. It's like they were saying, look what we can create, but also look what will happen if you defy us. It sounds like a very deliberate strategy to maintain control over their vast empire.
It was a complex worldview for sure, but their carvings served as a powerful form of propaganda, a warning to potential enemies. This is what happens if you cross us. But these stone carvings, while impressive, were only one piece of the puzzle. The Assyrians were not just about brute force. They also developed a sophisticated system of governance.
So they were thinking about long-term control, not just winning battles.
Yes, they knew they needed a structure to manage this huge empire. Think about it this way. Imagine dividing a vast empire into smaller, manageable provinces, each with its own governor. These governors were responsible for collecting taxes, maintaining order, and supplying troops to the central army. That's how the Assyrian administrative system worked, and it allowed them to effectively manage their vast territories and resources.
It sounds like they were incredibly organized and efficient. They were innovative in trade, brilliant military strategists, and then had this genius for administration. You'd think an empire that powerful would last forever, but like all empires, it eventually crumbled. What started their decline?
Well, constant warfare takes a toll, both on resources and morale. You can only conquer for so long before people start to resent you.
That makes sense. And I imagine being constantly on edge, fearing rebellions, takes a toll too.
Exactly. As the Assyrian Empire weakened, rebellions began to erupt within their territories.
So they basically sowed the seeds of their own destruction.
In a way, yes. And at the same time, rival empires, sensing weakness, saw their opportunity.
So who were these rivals who delivered the final blow?
The Babylonians and the Medes saw a chance to seize power. And in 612 BC, they formed a coalition and attacked Nineveh, the Assyrian capital. It was a turning point in history. The end of an era. One of the ancient world's most dominant powers had fallen.
It's amazing how a civilization that controlled so much could just vanish. I mean, we still talk about the Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, but the Assyrians, it's almost like they faded into obscurity.
Yeah, it's interesting how some civilizations capture our collective imagination more than others. But while the Assyrian Empire might not be as famous as those other ancient empires, they absolutely left their mark on the world.
That's true. I mean, we're talking about a civilization that lasted for centuries. Their cultural and linguistic legacy lived on in the region long after their empire crumbled. And even today, archaeological discoveries continue to reveal new insights into their civilization.
Yeah, those archaeological discoveries are incredible. We're talking about palaces, temples, libraries filled with thousands of clay tablets,
Yeah.
inscribed with their cuneiform writing system.
Wait, cuneiform, what's that?
Oh, good point. It's their writing system. They used a wedge-shaped tool to press symbols into clay tablets. It was a complex system. And through these tablets, we've been able to piece together their laws, their religious beliefs, even their everyday lives.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's like we can actually hear their voices through these tablets. It makes them feel so much more real, not just names in a history book.
Exactly. And these tablets are filled with all sorts of stories, tales of their kings, their battles, their gods, and even their poetry and literature.
It really makes you think about how much we still have to learn about them. But going back to their downfall, what stands out to you about their story?
Well, what strikes me is that they were incredibly innovative,
Hmm.
adaptable, and strategic in so many areas. Trade, military tactics, governance. Yet they were also incredibly ruthless. And in a way, you could argue that the very things that made them powerful, their military strength, their focus on control, also contributed to their downfall.
It's like they built this incredible machine, but couldn't control the forces they unleashed. Their story is a cautionary tale, isn't it?
It is. The Assyrian Empire reminds us that even the most advanced civilizations are vulnerable to internal strife and external pressures.
It makes you wonder, how do you balance ambition and innovation with compassion and sustainability? The Assyrians certainly didn't find that balance, and their story forces us to ask ourselves, are there lessons we can learn from their mistakes?
I think there are a lot of lessons we can take away. One thing that stands out to me is the importance of understanding different perspectives. We often look at the Assyrians through the lens of their military achievements and their brutality. And while those aspects of their history are undeniable, they were also a complex and sophisticated civilization with a rich culture and a fascinating story.
That's so true, and it's easy to judge them based on our modern values. But to really understand them, we have to try to see the world through their eyes. We have to consider the challenges they faced, the choices they made, and the consequences of those choices.
Yeah, it's about trying to grasp the complexities of their world, not just labeling them as good or bad. The Assyrians were products of their time, and their story, as with any historical narrative, requires nuanced understanding.
It's a good reminder that history is rarely black and white, and that there are always multiple sides to every story.
Exactly. And by exploring these different perspectives, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the richness and complexity of the past, and perhaps even find insights that can help us navigate the challenges of our own time.
Okay, so let's shift gears for a moment and talk about something a bit more positive. We've talked a lot about their military achievements, but what about their art and architecture, those stone carvings we discussed earlier? What else can you tell us about their artistic legacy?
Well, their art and architecture were spectacular. Their palace reliefs are renowned for their intricate details and the stories they tell. You see everything from scenes of royal hunts and battles to depictions of their gods and mythical creatures.
It sounds incredible. But did they only focus on war and conquest? Were there other forms of art that they excelled at?
Oh, absolutely. They were skilled metalworkers, creating beautiful jewelry and weapons. And they produced stunning ceramics and textiles, with intricate designs and vibrant colors. Their artistic achievements weren't limited to stone carvings. They were masters of many different forms of artistic expression.
Wow, it sounds like they had a really sophisticated and vibrant culture.
They did, and their art wasn't just about aesthetics. It played a crucial role in their society. It was used to express their religious beliefs, to showcase their power and authority, and to communicate their values and worldview.
So their art wasn't just decoration, it had a real purpose and meaning within their society.
Exactly. And when you study their art closely, you can learn a lot about how they saw the world
Yeah.
and how they wanted to be seen. It's another way of connecting with them across the centuries.
And speaking of connecting with them, their religious beliefs must have played a huge role in their lives, right?
Absolutely. Religion was central to Assyrian society. They were polytheistic, meaning they believed in multiple gods, and each city had its own patron deity, whom they honored with temples and festivals.
So they weren't all worshiping the same gods.
Well, there were some major deities that were worshipped throughout the empire. Ashur, the god of war, was the supreme god of the Assyrians. Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, was another very important figure.
It sounds like their gods were pretty powerful.
They were. And the Assyrians believed that their success depended on the favor of these gods. They performed elaborate rituals and sacrifices to appease them and ensure their continued blessings.
It's interesting how religion permeated so many aspects of their lives, from their art and architecture to their military campaigns and even their system of governance. It really highlights just how different their world was from ours.
It does. And it's a good reminder that when studying history, we need to understand the context of the time period and avoid imposing our modern perspectives and values onto the past.
That's a great point. It's about trying to see the world through their eyes, not ours.
Exactly. And it's through that understanding that we
Yeah.
can truly appreciate the complexities and nuances of civilizations like the Assyrian Empire.
So we've talked about the rise and fall, like military might, their innovations, their art, their religion. It's clear they were a complex and fascinating civilization. But ultimately, they've vanished from the world stage. Is their story simply a tragic tale of an empire that couldn't escape its own brutality? Or is there more to their legacy?
Well, it's tempting to focus on their brutality. And there's no denying that it played a part in their story. But their legacy is far more intricate than that. We need to remember that they were also brilliant innovators, skilled administrators and creators of breathtaking art.
So their story is a mix of light and shadow.
Exactly. And it's in that interplay of light and shadow where we can truly grasp the complexities of the Assyrian Empire. It's a civilization that continues to fascinate and challenge us to rethink our understanding of the ancient world.
It's true they left behind a puzzle that archaeologists and historians are still piecing together today.
Yes, and that puzzle is full of surprises just when we think we understand them. A new discovery challenges our assumptions and opens up new avenues of inquiry.
It's amazing to think that even after all these centuries, we're still learning new things about the Assyrian Empire. It makes you wonder what other secrets they still hold.
Yeah, it really is a story full of twists and turns. It is, and it's a reminder that history is never truly finished. There's always more to discover, another layer to peel back. And as we learn more, our understanding of the past continues to evolve.
So what can we take away from all of this? What can we, in the 21st century, learn from the rise and fall of an empire that existed thousands of years ago?
That's a great question. And I think there are a few key takeaways. First, the Assyrians show us the power of innovation and adaptation. They were constantly pushing boundaries, whether it was in trade, military tactics, or governance. And that willingness to embrace new ideas was a key factor in their success.
So they weren't afraid to experiment and try new things.
Exactly. They weren't bound by tradition. They were willing to take risks and challenge the status quo, and that allowed them to achieve remarkable things.
But at the same time, they also demonstrate the dangers of unchecked ambition and the corrosive effects of brutality. Their reliance on force ultimately contributed to their downfall.
That's right. Their story reminds us that power, without compassion and a sense of justice, can be unsustainable. It's a lesson that's just as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago.
So it's about finding that delicate balance
Hmm.
between strength and compassion, between innovation and sustainability.
Precisely. And that's a challenge that every society, every leader has to grapple with.
Yeah, it makes you think about the choices we're making today and the long-term consequences of those choices.
It does. And it highlights the importance of learning from the past by studying history, by understanding the successes and failures of those who came before us. we can gain valuable insights that can help us navigate the challenges of our own time.
So to wrap things up, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember about the Assyrian Empire?
I'd say remember their complexity. They were more than just conquerors. They were builders, innovators, and artists. They had a rich culture, a complex belief system, and a story that continues to unfold even today.
Well said. It's been a fascinating journey through the world of the Assyrian Empire. We've uncovered their secrets, explored their triumphs and tragedies, and maybe even learned a few lessons along the way.
I hope so. And who knows, maybe this deep dive will inspire you to do some exploring of your own. There's still so much to discover about this incredible civilization.
Absolutely. We've just scratched the surface. Keep digging, keep questioning, and keep exploring. The past is full of fascinating stories waiting to be told.